Cliff Mosher, when did you arrive in Vietnam?
1968.
1968.
December of 68, yes.
December of 68.
Yes, sir.
And you were in the Army?
Yes.
At that time?
Yes. I was a commissioned officer at that time in the Army. I was a second lieutenant at the time.
You were
yes.
second lieutenant.
Yes.
And how long had you been in the military before you arrived?
Preston, I joined the Navy in 1955. In April of 1955, I turned 17 years of age.
Wow.
And I'd already enlisted in the Navy.
In the Navy.
And they were waiting on me to graduate high school. May the 4th I graduated. May the 11th I was headed to Great Lakes, Illinois to basic training, to boot camp.
Yeah.
And I spent, I was on a cradle cruise. I got out of the Navy the day before I was 21.
Wow.
And after I got out of the Navy, I determined that if I ever had to go to combat, I wanted to be on the ground and not on a ship. So I switched over to the National Guard, and later I was stationed in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I believe I was a staff sergeant at the time, and the unit came to me and said they had some allocations for OCS. Would I consider that?
The Officer Candidate School.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd never considered being an officer. I was completely satisfied being enlisted. I only had a high school education, and I said okay. So I went to Camp Robinson in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and that took a year to graduate OCS. Preston, we started with 75 candidates and graduated 51.
Wow.
And out of the 51, I was selected as the honor graduate of that class.
Wow.
Which was a huge honor for me. Probably the only kid there that had a high school education. Most of them had college or some college.
Sure.
And so after I graduated OCS, I wanted to go to Vietnam.
You wanted to go to Vietnam?
Yes, sir. I heard the war stories, and I couldn't separate fact from fiction. I didn't know what was true and what wasn't.
Wow.
And I thought I need to go to see for myself.
Sure.
And my counselor said, Cliff, you can't volunteer for Vietnam. Nobody does that. He said they'll want to give you a Section 8, which means you're not in your right mind.
Or
something.
Crazy.
I said, well, that's what I want to do. He said, well, you don't have any education, Cliff. He said, you need to ask the Army for something. And I said, I don't know what to ask for. He said, well, I understand that flight school is about $30,000 worth of education. So why don't you say, if you send me to flight school, I'll go to Vietnam. So I did that, and they said, well, yeah, okay.
Wow.
So I went to flight school, and went to Fort Walters, Texas for basic rotary wing flight school, and then after that I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to transition into the Iroquois helicopter, and did that. And Preston, I still wasn't a good pilot. I passed everything, but I knew I couldn't fly very good. I went to Vietnam after that. I was assigned to the 25th Infantry Division at Cu Chi.
Cu Chi.
And
near Saigon.
I'm sorry?
Near Saigon, Cu Chi.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, close to Saigon.
It was in 3 Corps in the delta of Vietnam. That's where I learned to fly.
Actually in country.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
we flew 7 days a week,
Right.
night and day, and
Oh.
the demand was on pilots was everybody needed helicopters for everything.
Right.
So,
So it sounds like when you arrived in Vietnam, you weren't very confident in your ability as a pilot.
No, I knew I wasn't very, and everything.
Yeah. But the pressure of the place forced you to become a good pilot.
I was very proficient very rapidly.
Yeah.
The commanding general, which was Major General Ellis Williamson, fired his current pilot, and the unit had to have someone to replace him, so they selected me to fly the commanding general.
Wow.
I did that for several months. I can't remember how long.
So one of your missions was to take the general wherever he wanted to go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I flew. That's all I did was fly him. Yeah,
Flew him around.
Everything.
So what kinds? I imagine that means trips to Tan Son Nhut, the airport by Saigon. What kind of places did you go?
We had 3 brigades.
Uh-huh.
We had a brigade at Cu Chi, one at Tay Ninh, and one at Dao Tiang. So we would go to Dao Tiang and Tay Ninh and whatever, wherever he wanted to go.
Sure. Yeah. So not so much Saigon then.
So what?
You didn't fly so much into Saigon then.
No.
Okay.
No.
More on the country.
Mostly whenever we had contact with the enemy,
Yeah.
he was always there. It was called command and control.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'd be up there in the air when we were having battles. In other words, yeah.
Oh, is that right? And
Yeah.
and the general is what is the general doing while the battle's taking place below?
Observing and conducting. I mean, in charge of the whole thing. Yeah, is that understandable?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, as a pilot, then you're transporting the general around, and some of the times you're flying the general around, there's actually a battle taking place that the general is observing. And now you're flying the helo, but were you able to witness this as well? The battles taking place down below?
Affirmative, yes, sir. Yes,
Wow. So when I mentioned that, you're observing these battles as you're flying the general over the battlefields. What sort of memories come to mind when you think about the battles you overflew?
Preston, I don't recall except in Vietnam when I flew the CG or when I flew regular missions. That always in my mind, the mission was prime. That if we were flying resupply, if I was taking ice cream to the troops in the field, that was an important mission to me, no matter what,
Yeah.
And we flew when I didn't fly the CG, we flew probably 20 different types of missions. We flew resupply, command and control, Nighthawk.
What is Nighthawk?
All night long, flying all night long, supporting the troops on the ground.
Oh, like bringing them supplies and things like that.
No,
Or-
not. The troops on the ground said they would contact me and say, we think we have NVA or VC off to the east of us or something, and we would go. We had a strobe light, and we would go and we had door gunners, and we would go and try to flush the enemy or whatever, and everything to support the troops on the ground.
Yeah.
We flew flame bath, we would drop petroleum and ignite it.
Is that napalm?
We flew.
Was that napalm? The petroleum
No,
that you're talking
no,
about? Oh, okay, it's
no.
different.
It was
Okay.
just it was like diesel fuel or something. We would
Oh.
drop, and ignite it, and everything.
And that was called flame bath.
Yes, that was the title.
Yeah.
We flew defoliation, Agent Orange.
Agent Orange.
We flew transportation, moving troops from one end of the insertions, extractions, putting troops on the ground, pulling them back out.
So when you're doing all these different kinds of missions, your helo must be receiving ground fire.
Sometimes, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly on insertions and extractions,
Right.
putting troops into an area
Yeah.
or removing them. They call it a hot LZ.
Right. Hot landing zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever have a helo significantly damaged or disabled?
Damaged, but not disabled. One time, the small arms fire in my windshield and stuff like that. And
Wow.
everything. Yeah.
As you were flying?
No, on the ground.
On the ground.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the use of Agent Orange. Of course, the purpose of that is to get rid of the foliage so that you can see the VC, you can see the NVA. Of course, there have been a lot of health problems associated with that. Have you had any health problems associated with Agent Orange?
With prostate cancer, I was determined to be 100% disabled because of prostate cancer. Yeah.
My understanding is that for Vietnam veterans, if a Vietnam veteran gets or is diagnosed with prostate cancer, then the VA just automatically relates it to Agent Orange. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard.
When they were examining me, as if it was determined I had prostate cancer, to notify him immediately, and Preston, the best I remember, like in 2 weeks after I notified him, I was granted 100% disability.
Yeah.
So it very rapidly, sometimes took years, but not
with
in that case. I don't know.
You said a while back that you wanted to go to Vietnam. You said that a person you talked to said, if you tell them you want to go to Vietnam, they'll think you're crazy. But you do go to Vietnam. After being in Vietnam, what did you think about the war then? You said you wanted to go, but now you're actually there. What did you think about the war while you were there?
Preston, I enjoyed it. I was trained to fly that helicopter, and I told you those missions were very important. So it was to be serving my country in that capacity was excellent for me. I spent 2 tours there.
Oh, 2 tours. Yeah.
At the end of my first tour, I extended for 6 months, and then I extended another 6 months after that.
Wow.
I had planned to stay there even longer. But the 25th ID Infantry Division was pulling out of Vietnam, and I still stayed. And then at one point the unit dwindled down to where they put South Vietnamese troops guarding our bunker line, and I thought it's time for me to go home. They were good troops, but they weren't U.S. troops, and they didn't have the commitment that we had.
Oh.
And the way we believed that you served in the military. The South Vietnamese could change sides. if they were captured or something, and they could become NVA
Right.
or Viet Cong, and it
Yeah.
was not a disgrace to them like it would be to a U.S. soldier.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, are we in 1970 now when you leave Vietnam? 1971 maybe?
No, December 70 is when I left Vietnam, yes.
So I think we're in that Vietnamization process, right? Where the war is increasingly being turned over to the South Vietnamese. And it sounds like
Affirmative, yes, sir.
yeah, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing duties that had been held by American soldiers are now being handed over to the ARVNs, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And it sounds like you weren't confident in the ARVN forces to...
No, we never were. I mean, and I said they were good troops and
Yeah.
tried, like if we were captured, only name, rank, and serial number. To them, that
Right.
that wasn't that important as it was to us, you know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Now, so you served in the Navy. How long did you serve in the military altogether?
39 years.
39 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
And I guess that's when I turned 60. I retired. I guess I'd have stayed longer. The
Wow.
military was an excellent fit for me.
yeah.
You know.
That's amazing. So you're enlisted Navy, enlisted National Guard, officer, and now I see that you've got your uniform on here, and at different veterans events, I see that you wear your Army uniform. Of your 39 years, that's incredible, 39 years of military service, are the 2 years in Vietnam sort of the high point for you?
Absolutely, combat. Because you're trained as a rifleman or a cook or whatever, and you practice and train and everything, and then when you go to combat, you actually put those skills into use, you know.
You were saying a minute ago that you didn't have a lot of confidence in the ARVN forces, the forces of South Vietnam, and that's common. You know, most veterans say that. What was your perception of the Viet Cong and of the NVA as an enemy? Did they seem to be committed?
They were good. Oh, hell yes, in Vietnam, I thought we did an outstanding job. The troops did, and the officers, but Vietnam, there was the political aspect that someone in D.C. was issuing orders, and we weren't allowed to go into Cambodia after the Viet Cong or the NVA, and so there were restrictions placed on the U.S. troops as to how aggressive we could be in the battles.
So you felt like, a lot of veterans, Vietnam veterans often say this, you felt like your hands were tied.
Absolutely. For my commanding general, his hands were tied. We would establish fire support bases. Just go out in an area, and they would place artillery weapons there, and sandbags all around, and concertina wire, and they would do that in a day and establish a fire support base. We established one near the Cambodia border called Fire Support Base Diamond.
Yeah.
And it was my understanding that later my commanding general was admonished for doing that.
For setting up that fire base?
That he encouraged the VC to attack him, he initiated the thing. They would start that fire support base, and in a day, they could not be very well prepared by evening time, and that's when the enemy would attack the same day.
Wow. Yeah.
And they came across the border and attacked Fire Support Base Diamond. You would think that by evening time that the U.S. could not be prepared,
Yeah.
but they were. It was, in other words, it was a trap.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
They had other artillery bases zeroed in on Diamond to protect them with artillery pieces. We had all the air support laid on and everything.
I see.
And the NVA or the VC lost tremendously when they attacked.
But you said the general was reprimanded for this?
He was not supposed to initiate contact, and so he lured the enemy across the border to.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a strange sort of war if you're not supposed to initiate contact.
Absolutely, and see, like I said, we when he would go back into Cambodia, we were not allowed to go after him. You know, we did on occasions, but not. But you would say, I didn't know I was across the border.
Right.
If you're in the air or what, yeah.
It's sort of, you're right.
Yeah.
Right, pretend you didn't know. 2 years in Vietnam, is there a particular day, is there a particular event that most stands out in your mind? I mean, I imagine you've got over 2 years, you're going to have a lot of intense experiences. Is there a particular day, a particular event that most sticks out in your mind?
In the battalion area, we had a small officers club, and in that officers club we had one little window air conditioner. I guess the club was like maybe 30 by 30 or something, pretty small, you know, and everything.
Sure.
But this window air conditioner was fidgety, and I had figured out how to hit it with a hammer or whatever to make it work. So they always said, Cliff, get the air conditioning going, you know. So one evening, I'm in the showers. It's daylight in the evening, and we had outdoor showers. And the executive officer, Major Melmans, came down to the shower, and he said, Cliff, he said, the colonel and I are up here in the club and it's really hot. Could you come up and get the AC going? I said, yes, sir. I said, as soon as I finish my shower, I'll come right on up there. And he said, well, Cliff, he said, that if you just throw on a towel maybe or something and come on up there, we'd appreciate it. So he's a major and I'm a first lieutenant, so I said, sure, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I had on my shower shoes and my towel and followed him up to the
Yeah.
to the club, and came out of the bright sunlight into the darkened club, and the entire staff was there. And when I walked in, the adjutant called attention to orders, and I stood at attention. And he read my promotion to captain, and then Major Melmans pinned the captain bars on my towel.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So that was a memorable promotion for me, you know, and everything, yeah.
I can imagine that. And you're wearing your captain's bars right now.
Yes, sir. In 1975, I was rifted, reduction in force, from the Army. After Vietnam, they had a big cutback. They had too many captains, too many helicopter pilots, and I fit both categories. And I was a hell of a good officer. I knew I was, but I only had a high school education. And so when they sat down and looked through records and everything, they came and they said, hey, this guy's only got a high school education. So my current commander said he wanted to fight it, my riff. And I said no, because if I had enough pull with endorsements to keep from getting rifted, then someone better than me would be rifted. But my commander said, I've got some captains they can have, but they're taking the wrong one. I said, well, so anyway, I left active duty, and that was in '75. And then I didn't get back in the National Guard till '88. I had tried several times, but they had a fire in St. Louis and destroyed a lot of records.
Right.
And they couldn't find records of mine, and the recruiting NCO couldn't get me back into the Guard. And finally he said, Cliff, this was in '88. He said, Cliff, the only way, if you resign your commission and go back and enlist, I said, let's do that. So I resigned my commission,
Wow.
which was very important to me.
Sure.
Because to be a commissioned officer, so I went back in as a buck sergeant and stayed in the Guard till I turned 60, and at that time I was a sergeant first class, and I'd been to Iraq and Saudi Arabia for Desert Storm. And so anyway, and when I turned 60, I was E7 sergeant first class.
Wow.
But when I retired, I reverted back to my highest rank,
Captain.
which was captain.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's mention this. Let's talk about this briefly, because I didn't know that you deployed during the Gulf War. What work did you have during the Gulf War?
I drove the S4.
So your primary work then during the Gulf War was to be the driver for the major.
Affirmative, yes.
Yeah.
At the time, I was either sergeant or staff sergeant. I can't recall.
One of the big stories of the Gulf War is just the waves of Iraqis surrendering.
Affirmative, yes, sir.
Did you witness that?
Oh, yes, sir. The Navy and the Air Force flew over Iraq constantly prior to the ground attack.
Right.
They bombed and strafed, and they didn't bother so much the frontline troops that were lined up on the border, but they went in behind them, supplied channels, command and control. They destroyed a whole lot of that. The troops on the front line, the Iraqi troops, they had weapons, ammunition, but they weren't getting any mail. They were, you understand?
Right.
They didn't know what was happening to their family back in Baghdad.
Yeah.
And so when we went through the berm, they had no ambition to fight. We were overwhelming, and like I said, the Air Force and the Navy, the jets and the helicopters had brought morale way down on the Iraqi front troops, you know what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah. Another image that sticks from the Gulf War is what was called the Highway of Death. And did you happen to see that?
It was, that was in Kuwait. Yes,
Right.
sir.
As
Yes,
the
sir.
Iraqis were fleeing Kuwait, right, or leaving
Yeah,
Kuwait, and they were
there
just
were vehicles everywhere.
decimated from the air.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you saw that?
Well, we were on the highway to death one time, and I was in driving the Humvee with the Major, and we went through several vehicles. He was looking for a staff car, see if he could find a Mercedes for a staff car.
Wow.
In all these vehicles that were destroyed out there.
Wow.
So we didn't find one, but
Didn't find one. Wow. Yeah. In Vietnam, you know, your helicopter was shot at. You said you had the bullet holes in your windshield. You took ground fire. In Iraq, did you find yourself in any sort of combat situations?
I'm sorry.
In Desert Storm, did you find yourself in any actual live fire combat situations?
Negative. No.
Right.
No.
It was over so fast, huh?
Iraqi troops probably weren't on the level that U.S. troops were, but you can understand the morale of what those the Air Force and the Navy did back behind the lines.
Yeah.
So when we did go through the berm and came into Iraq, the will to fight just wasn't there.
It just wasn't
You know.
there. Yeah. Does the berm, does that refer to the border?
Yes,
of Saudi Arabia
from-
and
right,
Saudi
right.
Arabia and Iraq. That border?
Right.
I see.
They were on one side, we were on the other side, and you know, and then like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just my last question. You've got your uniform on now. You're obviously proud of your military service. 39 years, Navy, Army, enlisted, officer, back to enlisted. What word would you have for young people today who are considering serving in the military?
Of course, personally, I think it's a tremendous opportunity. You know, if you're of the right mind, the military is a great career, and for me, Preston, I think the greatest honor that I ever had was to serve my country in combat. That was well, a huge honor for me. Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Cliff Mosier, I really appreciate you taking the time to share these memories. Thank you.
My pleasure.